And so I think the daily thing for me is like, or the weekly thing is like, I try to write, a couple songs a week, if not 3 or 4.
Right.
And then, if I have shows on the weekend, go hit those shows and plan that out during the week and how we're going to do that, But that's the tough part about being an independent musician. I'd love to be playing more than I'm playing.
Yeah.
I got shows this weekend. I'm going to be gone and go to Atlanta, I think, this weekend. And then we got the thing with Nate coming up.
And you got Common John's.
Oh,
Friday
yeah, Common
night.
John's in Manchester. Yeah, so we're bumping around and doing that and like writes and podcasts, So I'd say the typical week is like, trying to stay as busy as you can.
Yeah.
Can you come to Iowa with us?
To Iowa. When are you going to Iowa?
We're going to Iowa September.
September. He's
My brain's
leaving out you're leaving out the 7th? 8th?
On Wednesday.
Yeah, so he's going on the 8th.
We're leaving on Thursday.
The 9th.
How many shows y'all going out there?
I think I have 3 or 4.
Yeah, everyone's got about 3 or 4 except for Bryce and Asher.
They have one.
Do they? Yeah, they have one in Lock 12.
Yeah. Damn. That's pretty sick.
Yeah, so I mean.
When is it again?
May 9th.
May.
September. Bro.
Okay,
May, baby.
May.
September 8th through 12th.
September 8th
is when I'll be there.
Yeah.
September.
Is that the Sunday?
September 8th
I
through
leave
12th.
that Sunday because I got to be back at school that Monday. So, and it's a 10-hour drive.
We're flying.
We're flying.
It's more than a 10-hour drive.
Yeah,
it's about
me
12.
and Justin are riding up there together.
I'd give it a good 10 and a half, 11.
Yeah. So you're leaving that Sunday. That means I've got to leave that Sunday.
Sucks.
Because apparently,
oh man, I
mean you were scholars.
all the time.
Yeah, I forgot that school's back at that point.
So that being said, as soon as you get through Paducah, you're not even halfway.
Oh wow,
it's long.
Yeah, well,
and then
I
it turns
just took
flat.
that trip.
Oh yeah, it's flat as hell up there in the damn deep Midwest.
That was I think.
I just took that trip. I know, like,
it sucks.
But I think I talked about this in the last podcast. I didn't realize that the rest of the country's flat. I've always grown up and like always just seen like hills in the distance, and it's never been anything I've noticed. But then I got to Iowa and realized those hills aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
From
here to the
until
Rockies,
you cross the river.
Yeah. Once you get south of Atlanta, it just flattens out all the way into Florida. There's random times where it defies the odds with hills and stuff. Like Tallahassee's really hilly in Florida.
Right.
There's not a lot of hilly places in Florida, but Tallahassee is really hilly. You could be up on this big hill and like see another ridge in the like you don't see that shit in Florida.
Yeah.
So it's like that little area right there, real close to Georgia. It's has that hilly vibe, and then like along the Apalachicola River and the Chattahoochee are the same thing.
Yeah.
Chattahoochee comes down from like North Georgia. It makes the border between Alabama and Georgia for the last like 100 miles of the state.
Right.
Then when it hits Florida, it turns into the Apalachicola River. So it's the same river, just different name.
Different name.
But along that river, and it goes pretty close to Tallahassee, which explains the hilly thing. But it goes almost all the way up that thing. There is like canyons and hills, and it's fucking nuts. Have you seen Brent Cobb's Providence Canyon album? Have you seen the album cover of that?
Yeah.
That's Providence Canyon is like in South Georgia.
Right.
And it's like a fucking canyon. Like you're looking down and there's like these big, like it's nuts.
Yeah.
So you get random spots like that. But besides that, it is just like flat as shit. All the way from South Carolina to Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, all the way out, dude. It's just
that's crazy.
Flat once you get down south of the Appalachians.
Yeah.
It's just like, and then you get up north of the Appalachians and a little west out in the Midwest, and it's just like again.
Yeah. Just flat as hell.
There's a lot of flat, but then there's a lot of mountains too. Like out west, I didn't really spend a lot of time out west at any point. So every time I go out there, I'm more mind blown by the next place I'm at. Cause I'm just like, holy shit. Like this is like some shit. You just don't see nothing like it at all. It's crazy. It's honestly really inspiring. You'll write some songs out there.
Oh, speaking of writing, I was going to ask you a songwriting question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick.
So
when you were out there, did you write any songs, Brett?
I actually didn't, but I did a lot of the things I saw and experienced did inspire me to write some when I got back.
Okay.
Dope.
But I was gonna ask Ryan. So I know it depends on the person, but would you prefer writing a song by yourself or with somebody else? And I know from experience as well that I kind of like the song that I'm writing to sound exactly how I want it to. And so when you're writing with somebody else, it can kind of, have their influence on it. So it kind of depends, but what's your preference?
I would say some of the best songs I write, like some of the absolute best songs I write primarily by myself. But I write with other people the majority of the time. And so the reason that is because you're not always on your A game. You're not always swinging the bat the same way.
Hit that block sometimes.
Yeah, and even like not even necessarily a block, just like you're sitting here by yourself and you're like, sometimes you're like, damn, I got this idea that I've been just like, pining over, and you make that, you want to do something with it. So you're like playing and you're like actively engaged with like whatever song or idea you have. And then sometimes you're sitting there and you're like, I don't want to fucking write a song. I want to like, kick my ass back and watch some football or whatever it is. Right. So the co-writing thing where you're scheduling yourself like a fucking doctor's appointment to write with somebody, it's a little weird at first because you're like, this is supposed to be like free flowing. This ain't supposed to be like a doctor's appointment.
Like you're forced to write. Like you feel forced to write.
Right. Yeah. But when you do that and you do force yourself to do it, you almost always get a song. Yeah. And it's, if you're writing with people that you like or people that are talented, it's going to be good. Yeah.
Right.
And it might not be the most like personal song to you. It might not be the most like personal thing you ever wrote. But hell, the radio don't want to hear the most personal fucking thing you ever wrote. They want to hear something that's down the middle a little bit. So if you're writing with multiple people, it's way easier to be down the middle because no one person's idea is taking too much of the reins. And that's honestly what they prefer at radio. So like if you're writing by yourself, you might write the most personal shit you ever wrote, but you might not write the most radio shit you ever wrote. So having a balance is always nice, but also on top of that, like the hangs are great. Yeah. The like when someone else is just as invested in a song as you are, like if you wrote a song by yourself and you put it out, like you're the only person that gives a shit about that song. Yeah. But if you put the song out and you wrote it with 2 or 3 other guys, they're all pushing that song like to their friends, to their parents and shit. They're talking about it. Yeah. They're pushing it, on socials and stuff. Yeah. So you got then just more people invested in the thing. So that helps too. Yeah.
I feel like when you write by yourself, it's driven by motivation and like what you're feeling right now too. And when you write with somebody else, it's kind of like putting yourself in another position.
Sure. But also what you said about like when you know exactly what you want this song to sound like, so you don't want to, you might not want to dilute that or whatever. Yeah. If you already have in your head what this song's supposed to sound like, don't write it with anybody else. Write that by yourself. Yeah. It's more like I have nothing going on in my head right now, and I'm just a human that exists that writes songs for a living, and I don't even know what I want to write right now. I don't have a lick in my head. Yeah. I don't have a lyric that I'm in love with. I'm just like going to this right. And then you have a, 20-minute conversation and the song just makes itself like in front of your face because of something one of y'all said, having a conversation. And then that turns into this great song. And it's like, that's when you co-write. Co-writing is, you want to be like being prepared. Like you're talking about like coming in wanting to be prepared. That is a good thing to do, and you should do that. You should always be writing down every like cool idea you think of. Yeah. You should always be writing every single one down. And if you think, I don't need to write it down right now, I'll remember it. No, you won't. Yeah. No, you won't. Dude, I'm telling you, no, you won't. It's a terrible thing, but you won't remember it. So always write it down right then on the moment. Like even if you're in the middle of talking to somebody, you'd be like, give me a second. Okay, anyway, what was that? I'm telling you, I do it every time. And I always write it down. And when you do that and you're like vigilant about doing that, you're gonna show up to writes with ideas ready to roll. Yeah.
One of the big things for me, like forgetting things, is like typically if I need to remember something and I think about it on the spot, like I'll put it down my notes or something. Mm-hmm. it's when I'm like going to sleep and I'm like right on the edge of going to sleep. I'm like, that is an amazing idea. I'll remember it tomorrow.
Nope.
And then I go to sleep and I wake up and I'm like, so what was it?
That's the worst, dude. I sometimes have them when I'm like almost waking up, where I'll be like in my dream, like writing a song, and I'll have this fucking awesome song as I'm waking up. And then like by the time I actually like, I'm like, oh, I need to write that down, you know? And then I'm like, oh shit, I'm asleep. Whoa. Then I wake up and boom, I can't remember it.
Yeah.
Immediately gone.
Yeah.
Oh, it sucks. And sometimes there's such great ideas in your dreams, dude. That's one of the really hard ones. But I always nowadays, dude, if I'm laying down and I like have this idea come to me and I'm like, oh, I don't want to get up. I'm just like, fuck it, I'm getting up. Like every time.
Right.
I'm telling you, like, that's the way that you always have a great hook. The reason that James Kelly is like, hey, dude, wasn't the truck that drove her away? I'm like, holy shit. Like he always writes it down right then.
Yeah.
And he's doing it. If you pay attention to yourself doing it, because we do it automatically. If you're paying attention to yourself doing it, then you'll know every time, oh, I should write that down. Oh, I should write that down. Well, before you start paying attention to yourself doing it, you just do it all the time. You might say something in conversation and not even think twice about it. Yeah. And it's like, that could have been a great song, you know?
Yeah.
But when you get used to like trying to hear the hooks and everything you say and everything that's going on around you, then it's like, you know, you're in the middle of a conversation. You're like, hold that thought. Okay. And back, you know?
Do you ever run into like an instance where you've written so many songs, you'll go back and be like, these 3 songs I've written sound the exact same? Because I do that all the time, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. I've learned that you go through seasons where it's like, in this particular season, you will write the same song sort of 5 different ways.
Yeah.
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
And like that don't worry about that, because that becomes a vibe where people like that vibe. Like, let's say the Zach Brown band, okay? That motherfucker wrote the same song over and over again, dude. Colder Weather, Sweet Annie. There's some more. Highway 20 Rides kind of in that same boat. Like he had that vibe, and that was a vibe that he did. And every time he did that vibe, it was a fucking radio smash.
I feel like that's where you find your sound almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then he would do like that reggae vibe where he like had a lot of that shit. Yeah. Then he would do some like rock vibes, and he had some of that shit. Then he'd have this bluegrass vibe where he's playing straight up bluegrass. Yeah. And he had like 4 separate vibes that he did, but he was like really fucking good at all of them. And every time he would write a song that's like, oh, well, that's kind of just like this other song he has. He's like, yeah, I know. And now it's a hit, you know?
And you still listen to it.
Yeah. You're still listening to it because people loved that, the original song that made them fall in love with that vibe of yours. Right. They love that song.
Yeah.
So if they get a new version of that same vibe, they're like usually happy about it. They're not like, oh, this is the same thing. They're usually like, oh, this is the same thing. Sick. Yeah. I love that song. This is like 2.0 right here.
People like what they know, I feel like.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean like to only chase what people like, what you think people are going to like.
Right.
That's not necessarily a good idea, because you really should be chasing what you want.
Yeah. Do what makes you happy.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the songs that I have that have that similar vibe, where I'm like, oh, I hear this similar vibe coming out in these 5 or 6 different songs. Like that vibe came out of me completely naturally.
Right.
So I trust it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, that is just what the fuck came out of me. And it came out of me 6 different times.
Yeah.
So I like that vibe.
Yeah.
And I have categories of songs, like when I was charting out this whole thing for picking songs for these last couple records, I was like, I had some new ones that I knew I wanted to cut, but I also had some ones that were like older songs, and I'm like, at some point I got to get to this song. And you know, I wrote them all out on one thing, and then on the next paper I categorized them like you know, up
this
up,
one
like,
would go good with this
up
one.
rock, and then I put every song that was like rocking as fuck.
Yeah.
Then I put one that's like country, like super country shit that I write. So then I had like, you know, somebody in that category. Then I had like, you know, the picky, like folky vibe that I do. So I had like several of those. And then like